Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dr. Cammy and Karen Go Keto, where we're working on switching out the standard American diet to a keto lifestyle. And now lately we've been working on carnivore. That's been better for me with my binges. And we have with us today a lovely guest, Mike Collins, who is the sugar-free man and creator of the Quit Sugar Summits, which have been wonderful informative summits for lots of people who are working on their sugar addictions, and just information on sugar and the use of it and the destruction of it in our diets in general. And our goal is to have a weekly check-in with Mike, where he's going to have various discussions that we're going to talk about, maybe do some counseling with me and work on my sugar issues, and counseling with Karen too, to work on her sugar issues and what's going on with that. So thank you so much, Mike, for being here with us. We so appreciate that.
It's an honor. Thank you so much for having me. It's great.
Thank you, Mike. I just wanted to say too, real quick, we'd like you to start with telling us your journey and how you got to where you are, where you think your role in the world is to bring this message, because I think that that's really powerful.
Wow.
And I've been to a couple of your summits, the Quit Sugar Summits. They're fantastic. And I just saw online that you just started today, right? A challenge.
Yes.
So
yes. 30-day
fill
challenge.
us in. Fill us in.
Yeah, no, thanks. So I got the podcast version. It's an abbreviated version of how I ended up to be the sugar-free man there. That kind of stuck. I didn't come up with that one, but it kind of stuck. So, but it does start a generation ago. I mean, it really does start with my mother, who my grandmother died when she was only 8 years old, and it was a terrible thing. You know, she was young. She was the last kid in the house. And my grandfather and her had to move in with his sister, my great aunt. And my great aunt wasn't the nicest person in the world, put it that way. But the bottom line is, my grandfather made a deal with my cousin Jim, his cousin Jim, who owned the country store across the street, that anytime my mom walked into that store, she could have any kind of candy she wanted and just put it on his tab. And while that was a wonderful thing to do for a child who was only 8 and lost her mom, it set in motion like decades of, my mother believed, and I believe she died, believing sugar was love, is love. And that's how I grew up, unfettered access to everything. I could have as much sugar in my cornflakes as I wanted to make Kool-Aid with 3 times the recipe. And it just went on and on. And we were basically her using buddy. Like she was, having baking and all kind of stuff. Plus that's before the candy and the ice cream and like that. And when my father wasn't drinking, we had hot fudge sundaes to watch TV with, and he would, that was his little come down during the week when he wasn't out drinking on the weekends, So sugar was, a big part of my growing up. And, fast forward, I run into beer at 13 or 14 or 15. And this is one of the most important things, the entire series. I knew that beer changed my state. I knew that I was, kind of shy, and I could drink behind the high school, and I felt liquid. They called it liquid courage. I could talk to the girls. So I knew there was a change in how I felt when I drank beer. Didn't really understand it about the sugar. But if you fast forward, when I got sober at 28, we could talk about that, but I went right back to the sugar, as many people do. Like my emotional management system, since I was a baby, likely in the womb when my mother gained 60 pounds on a 100-pound frame, and she told me she only ate sugar, because it was so available in the house, I was able to, anytime I was worried, my father was violent and verbally abusive. And anytime I got my head, the deal he made was that just don't hit him in the head. My mother made a deal with him, don't hit him in the head. So when I got, when there was violence or chaos, I would go to sugar. And my mother would go to sugar. We'd all go to sugar, right? And I didn't realize that was what was happening, that I was just feeling a little bit better, right? But I knew it with the beer, right? So then after I got sober, I went on to have a regular life. I did raise a couple of sugar-free kids, I don't know how my ex-wife ever learned this. I mean, or how I actually talked her into it. But no sugar, no flour, no caffeine in the womb until they were 6 years old. And that was that I could tell you about that story, but I believe that the experiment was a huge success. And keep going a little bit. Fast forward, I get to 2000. You know, they said I should write a book because obviously at that
You
time,
should.
it's like 30 plus years ago, they thought, you know, that was a very strange way to grow up. And we fought the grandparents in the Montessori schools and whatever. But this all came about. I missed a piece. That this all came about because I read a book called Sugar Blues by William Duffy, who actually married Gloria Swanson, the famous movie star. Anyway, so here I am. I opened Sugar Addiction in 2009, but I was still working. I was like a blog. I wrote about it. I talked to a few people. I had a little challenge out there, but a little course or whatever. But nothing really happened until the summit started in 2016. The book came out in 2018. And here I am, started coaching. I'm kind of semi-retired at the time. I start coaching people. I start hiring coaches. We're doing the thing. We had 2 meetings a week at that time. So then the pandemic hits, and I'm like, I was kind of ready, kind of geared up, but not really for what was about to happen. And so you saw the television, like they were eating all the sugar, the flour, like the shelves were empty of cake, ice cream, candy, cookies, soda, everything was gone. I mean, there were supply chain issues, but really it was people at home, comfort eating. The second part of the perfect storm was that like everybody knew how to use Zoom. It was like even grandma, because they had to use it to communicate, right? And so we went from 2 meetings a week to 5 meetings a day now. So we are, and most of the coaches have come through the system. They got off of sugar and then they decided they wanted to help others. And last year we got approved by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches for literally the first sugar group, but definitely the first sugar addiction group. And a lot of it, before I, end this little long story, and during that time, Sugar-Free Man kind of got stuck on me, and now I'm that guy. But during that time, we also, I don't know, the people who were involved with us started to help us out more. In other words, it became a real loving community, a real, like a community, dare I say, the most loving community on the internet, because we all been there. Everybody in there has, had an issue with sugar, ultra processed carbohydrates, caffeine, that kind of stuff. So that's the short version. I mean, I could answer any, usually brings up more questions than it answers, but I could answer any questions around that. But that's how I ended up from like sugar junkie to sugar-free man.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for updating us and kind of catching us up to speed. One of the things that I wanted to say was the meetings through Mike Collins' group are absolutely wonderful. They're group meetings, and there's something about sitting in a group of people who think and feel the same crazy kind of way you do about sugar and what it does to your body. And I say crazy, but not really, because when you look back, like when you look back at your story, or when you look back at other people's stories who are really struggling with sugar, it makes perfect sense the way that it happened for you.
Yeah.
And I really do. So I'm sober too. I originally sobered up in 2000. I had to change my date because I started smoking pot with my sister a few years ago. So I'm not doing that anymore. But in those groups, there's a lot of love and support too. I have to say that. But when you sit in a sugar group, you're dealing with food every day. Well, maybe not if you're fasting, but you're dealing with food most days. You have to continually be nourishing your body with something, and with alcohol, you don't. And that's a huge difference for me. I don't know if was a huge difference for you or not.
What with the alcohol? The difference between alcohol and sugar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's definitely different. And I had the same issue. I quit drinking when I was really young, and and then I went to pot. So I get it. It's, addiction is addiction is addiction, It's like, and I think what's important, and hopefully it answers your question too, is that sugar is now, because of the science, not me, I'm just the interviewer. And Karen had asked me like what I see my role in, and I'll weave that in there, is that, the science is now very clear. The emotional eating folks, and to an extent the eating disorder folks, but moreover the emotional eating folks, they had part of the puzzle correct. And that part of the puzzle was that it is related to the emotions, but at the end of the day, they missed the addictive piece of the puzzle, and they missed the part that moderation for some people just doesn't work. And in the eating disorder world and in the emotional eating world, you'll see books out there and educators and stuff. They believe that you should be able to moderate sugar at some level, and some folks just can't. The work as the chairman of the board of the Food Addiction Institute, and the data out of that institute, who's been doing a lot of the docs and MDs and PhD, they've been doing it for 20 plus years, excuse me, some of them 30 years. About a third of people biochemically cannot ingest sugar without setting up cravings for more sugar. And that's always been a problem, is a problem. But, to answer the question about, like where I see myself in the world, I'm the internet guy. My my first website went up in 1999, and I have made a full-time living for almost 25 years online exclusively. And I believe, especially with AI, the advent of AI, that the internet and that attention is the most valuable commodity on earth. It's a commodity that you cannot even buy with money anymore. Like, it's truly and in order to spread this message of the new science, because when you listen to the summits, you find that the science makes perfect sense and they've studied it deeply, but the general public still believes, like 85% of folks that come to us come for weight loss. And they still believe that eat less and exercise more is the answer to their problems. Whereas what we're discussing, and what I mentioned early on, is that this is really an emotional dysregulation problem, a dopamine dysregulation problem, a brain illness, right? And if you focus on the abstinence from sugar and flour, you're going to get a lot further than if you started to worry about pounds and scales and exercise and macros and all this other stuff. It's a chemical reaction in the body, not a calorie reaction, which is a unit of burning energy in a bomb calorimeter. It has nothing to do with the body. Anyway, so I see myself in that role as a person who can get the message out, who can continuously get the message out. It's what you guys are helping do right here. Get the message out that the possibility for some folks that biochemically, maybe, you've tried the cabbage soup diet, you've tried tried everything, Weight Watchers, and just let this information that you're going to see in this series light on you. You might see that you might be one of those persons who are not able to ingest sugar without setting up cravings for more sugar. And we've known for 20 years or 100 years, like what sugar does to the body. Type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, obesity, all this kind of stuff. But what is now coming to the fore is something called metabolic psychiatry, which is the understanding that if you're metabolically unwell, it's affecting your brain. It's affecting your frontal cortex, your decision-making process, which is perfectly in line with the addiction paradigm, the paradigm that some people could be addicted to sugar and that the dose makes the poison. We're doing a little heroin, a little cocaine, a little whatever, a little alcohol, but we are pounding as a society and now a world 20 teaspoons a day average, and that's the average. Anybody that ends up on my doorstep is 30, 40, and 50 plus teaspoons a day of sugar. So anyway, I get off on my soapbox, but that's kind of my view of how this is all shaken out and will shake out in the future. I'm very optimistic that it's going to shake out really well. I mean, I think that the internet, they call it an idea virus. An idea virus is something that will spread through the internet, and it is. In just the not few years, but 10 years that I've been doing it, the awareness level. When I started, there were 2 or 3 books on sugar and sugar detox and sugar addiction on Amazon. Now there's over 300. And so it's happening. It's just, I think it's happening too slow, and I think you do too, you guys.
Well, I think one of the things that I think about this whole science is that the problem is that the people who've been creating the studies are people that are sugar minded, right?
Yeah.
I think that the world will be very different when they are carnivore minded, because you can't take that away. That's like if every single study had been done from a viewpoint of somebody who was an alcoholic or a cocaine addict, right? Like you can't divorce that from the rest of their lives because it runs your brain. And I really think I just read a really interesting book called Strong Medicine by Blake Donaldson, who was an MD from 1962. And it's interesting that he wrote about one woman, and he wrote about how she was, since her last pregnancy, 178 pounds. Like, oh my God. And that's nothing these days.
Wow.
And what his prescription is almost all the time, fresh meat diet. 1.5 pounds a day, like basically a half a pound 3 times a day, and a small glass of black coffee and 6 glasses of water. And that's it. And he says in his book over and over again, your days with flour, gone. Your days with sugar, gone. So that science was there. And he was born in 1892.
Wow.
The interesting thing is he did die of a heart attack, I believe, when he was around 74. So relatively young for our days, but he was in World War I, and he was exposed to Agent Orange. So that's a possibility. Also, he talks in the book that it's okay that people smoke. They can't drink, but smoking is okay.
Well, there's the difference in the science right there.
Right. It's exactly right. And I think that, so even though in 62, and then of course you had Atkins and the other early guys, but it won't take that long for people to switch, at least for a while, right? When they realize how great they feel when they have it out of their system. And you can't take that away. 4 days roughly, right, out of your system.
Yeah, you can't unsee that. Definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah, I have to say that when we did our carnivore challenge, right, Karen? We did a 10-day carnivore challenge. And this was like, what, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, maybe? I don't know, time flies. And I couldn't do it. I didn't stay carnivore, like strict carnivore, during that time, except for like 3 or 4 days in a row. But by the end of that 3rd day, I remember going, gosh, I feel different. I have more energy. I'm more focused. And, so getting that out, I truly am one of those, 1/3. I definitely feel the chemical addiction to what goes on when I get carbohydrates in my body.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, Mike, that you can't actually, I disagree with the science that's out there as far as people being addicted. I think everybody is addicted to it. I just think it just depends on when it comes into your life, right?
Yeah.
If you started with alcohol at 14, you're going to be addicted. But if you are, like the epigenetics is part of it, right? Because, your grandmother didn't have McDonald's for breakfast every day. But certainly kids these days can have McDonald's for breakfast every meal, McDonald's, if they want.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be really different. That's like, they didn't have diabetes back in the 20s, hardly any diabetes. And now 5-year-olds have diabetes, type 2 diabetes.
Well, I do have to I do have to meet people where they are. And I agree with you 100%. You guys may have seen the interview last year, but I interviewed Elaine Lillane. It was Jack LaLanne's wife, and she's 98 years old. She's about ready to give me push-ups. I'm like, no. She was doing legless in the chair on Zoom here, right? But she had said, Jack had a saying, and Jack said, Jack blames sugar for everything. And you can look up in YouTube his Sugarholic video. It's really good. It's black and white, done in the 50s. And it's the same thing you're talking about with your guy, right? It's like Jack knew in the 50s, right? And so, and I've been doing this over, 14 years or something since sugar addiction started. But, that's for a living almost. And at the end of the day, I have seen so many remissions of everything you can't even think of one thing, including pregnancies and lupus and, chronic fatigue is just a paper tiger. Rheumatoid arthritis is a paper tiger. It's just there. When people actually quit, fatty liver goes in remission, type 2 goes in remission, 100-pound weight loss is not normal yet, but it's getting there. It's pretty common. And so I agree with Jack in seeing it over and over and over and over again that, people, when they stick to it, when they achieve an abstinence and go through what we're going to hopefully discuss on this series, the psychological changes necessary to stop using the sugar as an emotional management tool and start using exercise or massage or cooking good food or getting a hug or going to a sunset. There's a million ways to self-soothe that do not include a substance. And when that message gets out, when people start to understand it, I think people kind of intuitively understand comfort eating and the emotional in the emotional eating group of people, but they are missing that subtle nuance that for some people, not everyone now, but for some people, moderation is not possible. It's not a wise choice, at least at the very beginning. Okay, I always tell people, my only job in life is to get people to see 90 days of abstinence. Okay, if they can see it for themselves, viscerally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, they can make their own choice. Through, I'll be 40 years sober in a couple of days. And one of the things I learned is that it's not my job to tell somebody they're an addict. And that includes a sugar addict. I'm not here to tell you you're an addict. I don't know. But I do know that if I give you that 90, we earn it together we earn that 90 days, then you can make that decision. And what happens a lot of times is people re-ingest, whether it's a celebration, a slip, an accident, or whatever. And then when they do, they're just that's the learning moment. They're like, they get a little bit high. And then they go through this arc of being starving and then irritable and then sweating at night and then being depressed the next day and then being starving and trying to get and having sugar cravings all day the next day. And they're like, they just went through 89 days of not having that, or at least 60 days of not having that. And then they have that arc and they say to themselves, they didn't realize how good they could feel, right? So at this juncture, it's really a pattern recognition thing, because after 41,000 plus detoxes, it's pretty simple to know, if you did a proper intake, who the person is, what they're going through, and where they are in the journey, you know what I mean? And then to help them back down away from it.
I have a question for you, Mike, about your childhood.
Yeah.
and how you look back at it now. Do you feel that had your mother not been a sugar addict, that her tolerance for your father's behavior would have been different?
What a great question. And no one's ever asked me that in my life. And I say, absolutely, because my mother didn't go get drunk. She just went out and freaked out on sugar all day and all night.
And to me, that's when I hear you say that she said, oh, as long as you don't hit him in the head, that's like crazy talk, right? But
Yeah.
Your mom was not the only one who ever said that. Clearly, I could probably name 5 other people who had that in their lives. But it was when you were telling the story that made it really clear to me that is one of the things that maybe can clear up for people, is that they begin to really look at what is not working in their lives.
Oh my God, you're hitting the nail right on the head. So look, and this happens all the time. Here's the data from all these detoxes and all these 6,000s of written success stories, is that when someone loses 100 pounds, when someone puts type 2 in remission, when they put fatty liver and rheumatoid arthritis in remission, we do all these surveys to see what was the biggest benefit people got, right? And the biggest benefit is that their brain came back online, that they could think better, they remember better, they focus better, their anxiety is lessened. All of these things start to come to the fore, you know. And my mom was, you know, they call it the good girls drug, right? And it's like my father drank, my mother used sugar. And when she had a episode with him or work or whatever, she would use the sugar and that would calm her down for the day. And she would not, you know, just all you want to do is forget about it for 20 or 30 minutes. But you know what happens. It just keeps going on a hamster wheel like any drug. You got to re-ingest and re-ingest and re-ingest. And yeah, that was her way of self-soothing. Okay. That was what she learned, you know, in that, you know, that store across the street. She learned that, you know, she was grieving the loss of her mother, and that when she went over there and had some candy, she felt a little bit better for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And the same thing just never ends. And that's what all my clients are. And here's the hard part. When about day 15 rolls around and they've never done any of this, they've probably never gone a full day, let alone a full week or 2 weeks without sugar, that the crazy start. Okay. The common refrain is, Mike, I'm losing my mind. Okay. And they just start like weeping, and they're like they're irritable, and they hate everybody, they hate the world. They're just, you know, everything is anxious. And all it is withdrawals. All it is the changeover from substance-based dopamine to effort-based dopamine. They've got to change their management system to something that's healthy, that's repeatable, that's holistic, that they can use besides the substance. It could be alcohol, it could be sugar, doesn't matter. But they've got to go for a walk, go for a run, go to yoga, get a hug, watch a sunset, get a massage, get a manicure, get a pedicure. Something that will soothe them, something that will create dopamine over and over and over again that's healthy and holistic. And that's the only way to walk out of this. I don't care what your macros are or even what your diet is half the time. If you're eating whole foods, you're fine. I do believe the carnivore and keto method is much, much better because of the healthy fats that help the myelination of the brain. But at the end of the day, they need to figure out other ways of self-soothing. And that's the important piece of the puzzle that is missing from the diet literature. It's missing from the diet understanding and the $78 billion, pills, shakes, surgeries, Ozempic. It's just all a waste of time if you don't do what we're talking about here today.
And you're missing, the world is missing that right now. You know, the world is missing taking care of ourselves and taking time for meditation and stretching and journaling and being, you know, with nature. And, you know, all of us are hurting so bad, and, you know, COVID did nothing to help that situation. And, so I wanted to be able to be, you know, I wanted you to talk about your 30-day challenge, because a lot of people might be listening to this and relating to what we're talking about and saying, hey, maybe I have an issue. And your 30-day challenge is a wonderful way for people to get involved. And I did want to say that I have recently become certified through your course, and am currently now a sugar detox and addiction coach. And I really do feel like coaching through those first 30 days is really key. Even though you don't get into a lot of the psychological things till later, you've got to be kind of clean off the sugar for a while to really get deep into those areas of what really is causing that stuff, which is usually very young at age. But helping people support them through those days where you start to get crazy and things like that.
Yeah. No, thanks. It's so I've redone it 4 times simply because I've seen it, you know, keep learning, and keep seeing where people are in the different, different times. Like if you quit flour, sugar, and caffeine, and you had any habit at all, day 5, you're going to be like incapacitated. You're going to be like in bed with Tylenol. You know, you're going to be in trouble. But, as it progresses, you get through to the emotional stuff, and the emotional stuff can start on day one. But traditionally, you like to get through the physical stuff, and you start to feel better physically. You start to recognize some of the emotional work, but that's, comes later, usually after the complete detox. But the detox itself is, is videos of me, and because I really couldn't keep answering the same. Can I eat this? Can I eat that? What about this? What about that? Because it's pretty much the same now. We know what you can and can't eat, and what how you should exercise and whatever. We don't do exercise for calorie burning. We do it for what we've been talking about, which is emotional wellness, to make them, create some dopamine. And so you keep moving through the process. You keep moving through and you got 5 meetings a day to check in with people that are just like you. And we're tribe animals. We like to do stuff at the same time. And it's really, the technical scientific thing is called mirror neurons. When you see 12 or 15 or 20 people on a Zoom call, and they're all saying pretty much the same thing you're living, the candy at work's a pain, or my kids keep wanting this, or my husband won't eat the food I cook anymore. All of these things. I don't know what to order in a restaurant. Everybody has the same problems. It's not like they're all different. Everybody has the same problems. But as you mature through it, like you said, you get past day whatever, everybody's a little different, but some are day 30. Day 30 to day 90, you're looking at that kind of emotional growth. You're starting to realize that, you finally realize that it's not the diet and the weight and the food and the macros and the exercise, but what it is this changeover of your emotional management system. And, you get to, I don't want to say gripe, but you get to process that your boss is a pain in the butt, and your husband's being a challenge in this effort of yours. And so, and people are okay with it because they're going through it. Everybody's going through it or been through it. And the beauty is there's people in there with 2 and 3 and 4 years, and they're happy. And they usually open with, I lost 50 pounds. I divorced my husband. No, just kidding. But they do,
They do.
They say things like, I finally realized that I was the one doing all the work, and he was not supporting, whatever. You get to process these things. You got some safe place to process these things. And that's, I've said it a lot of times. I say, I want to shoot you straight. This is a codependency recovery program. This is a sticking up for yourself program. This is a saying no program. And this is a boundary setting program. These are the tools you need, not like, what are my macros and what is my this and what is my that, what do I eat? What do I eat kind of thing. So yeah, it's a little different. And as I say, let the information light on you. Watch this entire series as we go through it, and you'll see that that there is a little difference in the successes that we've had. It's just not public knowledge yet. That's.
I will add, Mike, since I talked to you about that Strong Medicine doctor, the book Strong Medicine,
Yeah.
His prescription also included a half-hour walk before breakfast, every morning before breakfast.
Yeah.
And it has to be for mental, because obviously 30 minutes a day before is not going to do anything.
Right. It's interesting you bring that up. I thought this book was older than this, but I actually found the CD. That's how long ago I had it. Called Change or Die. That's the name of the book. And it was about mostly cigarettes. Okay. And people would, they'd say, you got cancer. And they'd cut some part of their lung out. And then they'd be smoking through their trach tube, or, they couldn't quit. Right. And what he learned is that fear doesn't work and facts don't work. So you can't scare somebody into this, what we're talking about here, that even if they get type 2 diabetes diagnosis, can't scare them. And the facts that if you keep doing this, you're going to die or whatever, it's proven even with cigarettes. I mean, that's what that book was about. But, you've got to, and this is kind of, I don't want to get woo-woo on folks, but you got to love them through it. It's the same as drugs and alcohol. While I do believe in tough love and, you got to cut people off and not enable them, it's still it's still an illness. It's still a brain dysfunction, and it's not a moral issue. People do have to take responsibility for it, both here and in substance use disorder of alcohol or drugs. But it's like it's got to be more of a healthcare issue than a moral issue, or a laziness issue, or a sloth issue, or a that kind of thing. Because it's just not. It really isn't. We are in a weird situation that this brain neurotoxin, that's exactly what it is. This brain neurotoxin is prevalent in the diet. It's just, I think the most important, and we could get back to the carnivore if you want, is that we used to get fructose, and that's the vending molecule, once or twice a year as we evolved as a species. And today we have it on constant drip, and now high fructose corn syrup and the whole thing. So if you want to know what is the addictive drug, what is the thing that changes behavior, and what needs to be studied and changed, is the ingestion of fructose in all its forms.
So, Mike, what do you think is the person, so whoever's listening and says, oh, yeah, I think I do have a sugar issue. What is the most important thing? And the first thing, what I hear is you have to have the why.
Yes, that's
in
great.
order to do it.
Yeah.
And what is, if you wanted to tell them, what's their first step?
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say that, when I was going through your sugar, the 30-day challenge, I went through it recently and reviewed all the new tapes, and they were wonderful. And you say in there that the place where you are, the point where you are in your life, going through the change, the point where you are you have to be more miserable than you're going to be in order to make the change. I can't remember the wording.
No, the life you're leaving has to be bigger than the life you're headed towards has to be bigger than the life you're leaving. It's like you have to realize, and this is something I never knew, because I was a daydreamer as a kid or whatever, but I never realized that some people can't see themselves in the future. Like they can't see a positive, they're just head down, day to day kind of thing, right? And if you look at Think and Grow Rich, The Secret, every meditation and manifestation book talks about this ability to see a positive future, right? And what I learned is that we have to actually teach that to some people. They don't do that intuitively, or that's not something they do. And so right along with what you're asking is, you have to be able to see, first of all, you have to have, why am I doing this? Like Karen said, why am I doing this? Is it you can't do it for another person, first of all. That's number one. But, is it my weight? Is it my health? Is it my kids? If I want to dance at my grandchild's wedding, whatever. You got to, fit in my high school jeans for the reunion, whatever it is, you got to figure out that and have that as your thing. But then and this is work. People don't realize this is work. You have to visualize deep breath. When you're getting up or praying or meditating, wherever your practice is, you have to see yourself at the lower weight. You have to see yourself at the doctor's office with better numbers for your A1C and all the other markers that we gauge, we look at. You have to feel it viscerally. And that's, again, it's not woo-woo. It's very proven science. Dr. James Doty and Mind Magic, he's got all the psychological and neurological, he's a brain surgeon of manifestation and changing what's going to happen, right? And again, another thing that's not really added to the diet world or the diet industry, right? They don't understand this part. They're trying to pump shakes and pills and surgery and shots into you. And they're not there's a little bit of work to do, and one of them is exactly what you mentioned, Cammy, is to be able to see your new destination. So, but to finish answering Karen's question is what was I can't remember. It was tell me what it was. I can't remember what it was.
What's the next step or the first step for them to start?
The first step is to get to why you want to do it, to be able to see the outcome and work on seeing the outcome. It's not one and done. You got to do it a lot. You got to keep doing it day in and day out. But then, the challenge would help, but, it's abstinence and it's not moderation. What's the line? 100% moderation is a lot easier than 90% moderation. That just keeps, you'll hear me say this a lot, keeps the cravings alive. Nobody wants to do this if there's going to always be craving. That's just, who wants to, right? And so, again, my only job in life, I'm probably dating myself, but your only job, should you decide to accept it, Mr. Phelps, is that you want to see 90 days of abstinence and then let your own body tell you the answer to where you are. Everybody's done a reset. Everybody's done 10, 15 diets. Let's try this 100% abstinence of flour, sugar. And in our program is caffeine. We don't have time in this episode to get into that one. But those 3 innocuous, legal, you can give them to a baby. Nobody's going to be mad at you problems or substances. They are problems, but substances, if you can eliminate those, and you got to get with another group. Look, you joined a group to go to college. You joined a group to go to work. You joined a group to go to school. You joined a group in kindergarten. We're tribe animals. You've got to do this with other people. I mean, even in cancer, like if you were to get a cancer diagnosis and you went to visit or work with a survivors group, the chances of your survival go through the roof compared to somebody who's going to do it on their own, So you've got to have a group of like-minded people. There's actually very clear science now for you people that are interested in weight loss, that you become the average of the 5 people, the weight of the 5 people you hang around with the most, right? So again, this is all, and I love that you guys are doing this, because this is information that's in the world of science, in the world of people that are in the know of sugar addiction and sugar detox, but not out in the general public. And that's our goal here with this series.
All right.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. This feels like a good stopping point for now. And thank you so much for reviewing for us your history, how you got here. We talked about so many wonderful things, and there's so many other things to talk about that we're going to be doing in our series. We're going to unroll this. We're shooting for weekly for 6 sessions, see how it goes, and then take it from there. Karen,
Cool.
closing thoughts?
We can delve into some of the stuff we talked about and get, granular on the details. I love it.
Sounds good.
All righty.
Thanks, everybody.
Amen. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, so
I was going to say, oh, Cammy, you forgot to record it, but